Good afternoon and welcome to this lunch briefing titled Results of the Argentinian Elections. What are the implications for democracy? So this lunch briefing is very timely and we have the chance to comment on the results of the elections and also on the surprise of Sergio Massa's first place finish. And we have the opportunity to discuss not only the results of the election, but also the trajectory of democracy in Argentina with our speaker today, my colleague Dr. Janina Welp, who is a research fellow at the Graduate Institute's Albert Hirschman Center on Democracy. And she's the expert on a range of questions connected to democratic practices and participation, on social movements as well, digital technologies and politics, on democratic innovations. And she has recently published several books and articles on this topic. She's also an expert on democracy and democratization, and she has also an overview of recent developments on the Latin American region. So we might have the chance also to put the question of Argentina's future and future leadership and the question of democracy in Argentina in a broader perspective today. The format of the lunch briefing is a 30 minutes presentation by our speaker, followed by a Q&A with the audience, both in the room here at Maison de la Paix and online. So welcome also to those who are joining us online, and I give the floor to Janina and thank her for her participation in this briefing today.
So thanks, Christine, and thanks, Sophie, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Argentinian elections and to share with the audience some reflections on what happened and what could happen to Argentinian democracy through this electoral process we are experiencing now in the country. As a starting point, I would like to say that to talk about elections is always challenging because, of course, there is an analysis behind that. But when a person talks about elections in her or his own country, there is also an ideological dimension, particularly in elections such as the one we are experiencing in Argentina, where the ideological divide, even we can discuss what goes beyond the ideological, is on the table. So this is a kind of comment to start. And yeah, Argentina is a country of icons, you know, or you may know. Here I just decided to start with Maradona, Borges. Geneva is also a place very related to our memories related to Borges, Evita, Che Guevara. Of course, I should have added also Messi, which is our new hero in recent times. But we are here to talk about the elections, not about these icons. And I will try to organize my presentation in these 4 axes. First, the electoral results, just to provide a brief overview for the ones who are not aware or not really following the Argentinian case. And then I will move to try to reflect on this surprise Christine mentioned in the introduction, which I think has like 2 axes. The first one is the strong emergence of anarcho-libertarian in the Argentinian electoral spectrum. And the second one is this victory or the arriving in the first place of the Minister of Economy of the current government, Sergio Massa, which is also a huge surprise, and I will try to provide some ideas on what explains these both phenomena. Through the question how it happened And finally, I will focus on what's next, what we can expect in the near future and the implications for democracy. So yeah, just to go quickly on the results, up you have the three candidates which were more likely to arrive to the second round. During the campaign, there was an intense discussion also on the possibility of Javier Milei, the narco-libertarian, of winning without need of going to the second round. So that in part explains why it was such a big surprise that Massa achieved the 36% of the votes. We had first in August the primaries. During the primaries, these three candidates were also on top, although there were two real primaries in Unión por la Patria, where Massa won, and in Juntos por el Cambio, where Patricia Bullrich won. And Milei got 30% of the votes from a party in which there wasn't any primary. This is relevant just to understand, because some people is asking why Milei performed so badly in this first round. And in fact, he kept, and I think this is also hard to understand with the campaign he did, the percentage he got in the primaries, because he got 31%, and now in the first round he went for the 30%. While on the opposite, the big surprise was the results of Sergio Massa. And I will speak a bit more about also what happened with the opposition, the traditional opposition, which is incarnated by Juntos por el Cambio, and in this case, Patricia Bullrich. And here you have two maps of the country. The country is divided in 24 districts, 23 provinces, and the city of Buenos Aires, which is an autonomous city and has similar competences to a province. And you have the two maps, and the one with strong colors, yellow, blue, and green, shows the government of the provinces, the party in the government in the provinces. And this is very interesting, because what we have in blue is the provinces in which the Peronism, the Massa's party, let's say, to simplify, because it's always complicated for Argentinians, know here that everything is more complicated if we go in depth, but let's say, because the Partido Peronista has many coalitions inside, that's why, but let's say Massa's party is in the government on the provinces in which the color is blue. And the opposition of Juntos por el Cambio arrived to the government in the provinces in yellow. If we look at that, and in green, we have some provincial parties, many of which are also connected to the Peronist party. So what we have here is that La Libertad Avanza, the party of the anarcho-libertarian that is going to the second round, is not in the government of any province in Argentina. And the elections were during this year. In fact, the provinces, because it's a federal system, have the capacity to decide if conducting the elections in the same day of the national elections or doing it before. And this is part of the national, subnational games and competition. When there is a strong leader at the national level, then there are more incentives for the provinces in which leaders of the same party are running to unify the elections. And when this doesn't happen, provinces prefer to provincialize the election to avoid the negative effect of the national election or options on these provinces. So what we have is that only 7 provinces conducted elections on the 22 of October, the others did it before, but in no one of these provinces, La Libertad Avanza arrived to the government, which is a quite curious picture showing that there is a gap on the national competition and the subnational competition, and we can reflect much more about that. Because then the other map you have on the other side of Argentina, you can see that in fact there are only two colors with some differences in intensity. The blue, which is light blue or more stronger blue, is the Peronist Party, and the light purple is La Libertad Avanza. And these are the results of the primaries of August, in which you can see that in all the provinces, the most voted party or coalition was or La Libertad Avanza or the Peronist Party. So it's quite curious, again, if you take into account the two pictures, because in fact, comparing the data with the previous status of the provinces, Juntos por el Cambio, the traditional opposition, now has more provinces than before. So was in the government in 4 provinces in the previous period, and now will be in the government in 10 provinces. While the Peronist Party is reducing his presence in the provinces. But at the same time, the traditional opposition is out of the second round. So again, we have this gap between the national and the subnational competition that I think there is much more to reflect also on what it means and what is happening. But yeah. Now also on the electoral results, very important, and if there is here some people working on Latin American politics, I think it's very interesting to see this picture because there are some particularities still of the Argentinian case. If we take this picture for Ecuador or for Peru or for other countries, we have many more actors in parliament. And governability is much more complicated. So now we have that none of the parties has majority to impose or pass a law without agreement, but there are big majorities and there is a possibility to arrive to agreements. So I don't see here like this fragmentation we are experiencing in other Latin American countries. This is particularly relevant because in Latin America we have presidential systems. In Europe, when you talk about parliaments, the way in which laws and processes are negotiated in general are different. What we do have in Latin America or in the Americas with presidential systems is that the probability of having a blockage with a parliament highly fragmented or concentrated in hands of the opposition and the executive is always part of the probabilities and could create problems of governability. Just take into account, for instance, the probability of Milei of arriving to the presidency on the second round, then what will happen? That I think that if he keeps the radicalization of his proposals and ideas, what would happen is that will be an impeachment quite soon. I mean, governability will be a problem for Milei. And we can also explore this and talk more about that. But then, yeah, the surprise, no? It's like when the primaries happened in August, I think in many media, in Europe, in other places, was a huge surprise, also in Latin American countries, how an anarcho-libertarian, which is because, yeah, I know that there are similar leaders in other places. We are talking about Bolsonaro, about Trump. I think Milei goes beyond that, really goes beyond that, in the sense that in Argentina, during the last weeks of the campaign, we were talking in the public media and environment about proposals such as replacing the educational system for a system of vouchers, in which, I mean, it's market, everything oriented by the market. We were talking about free trade of human organs. We were talking about free market of babies in place of the system of adoption. Really, I know it's hard to believe, but this was part of the media discussion in the last week, which is also a surprise because if there are political scientists in the room, the manual of how to work in politics says that you have to radicalize, to create your space, and then you have to go to the center to really have probability of winning. And he or members of his party radicalized even more the discourse. For instance, Argentina is a country where we have the Pope now also as an icon, and the Pope is very well evaluated by the Argentinian people. And because Milei, the leader of La Libertad Avanza, is against the Pope, he suggested to break relations with the Vatican as soon as he arrived. So these kind of things, of course, we expected that would have taken a prize for him, and he kept the 30% of the votes. So it's very surprising. But we can also talk more about that, because in my view, and again as a political scientist working a lot about institutions, my feeling is that we really need other methodologies, another just to complement, not to replace the analysis of the institutional designs and performances and the institutional model, but to understand other things that are not easy to cap if you do surveys and if you do analyze institutions. And in the case of Milei, some anthropological, ethnographic work is showing that even the voters of Milei are afraid of him. Pablo Semán is working about that. But then what happens? Why it happens? Because representation, I think, from communication studies is quite interesting. Not only has this dimension we attribute from political science as is representing my idea, will do my program. In the case of Milei, it seems that part of the electorate is feeling identification with this level of disappointment with the system. He's a very aggressive candidate, and it has this performative aspect in which he is to somehow theatralizing this disappointment with the political elite, with the corruption, with the bad performance of the economy. And I think we have to put some attention on that. And also look at to what extent there is a different rationality, because I don't think the way to resolve political problems democratically is just to think they are stupid. So it's just an appealing to try to understand that. But then it's a second part of the surprise, which is how Massa, the Minister of Economy of a country with 150% inflation, 40% poverty in the government, arrived to 36%. How? And also there are some answers that I would like to explore with you in a moment. But we have these two big surprises. So then, I would like to also stop a bit on the Argentinian institutional design, because again, I think it's quite particular, even in the Latin American context, because it's a real partidocracy. Parties keep a very central role in Argentinian politics. And if you ask me how I valorate that, I think there are some negative aspects, but there are also very positive aspects. When I look at countries such as Peru, where many reforms destroy the political party systems, I see many negative aspects. So I think in Argentina, if someone asks me what we need to do, I think we need to improve, maybe more than institutional designs, the quality of governance. I think the institutions are not the main problem in Argentina. It's more the governance, the corruption, the way in which the public debate works, not the institutions. But quickly, let me go to why I said is a real partidocracia. Because the system is really well designed to avoid or prevent the entry of outsiders. Of course, you can immediately say it didn't work because Milei is there. And yes, of course, institutions play an important role, but it's always more than that. And also, I have to say, and probably we will agree, that even if institutions prevent the entry of outsiders, should open some room, because on the opposite, we really don't have democracy. Sometimes there is a need of renovation. I don't think this kind of renovation is a good one, but anyway, the system needs to be also able to introduce new ideas, proposals, projects, parties, leadership, etc. But here, what we have, the primaries, which are simultaneous, open, and mandatory. This is a complete, original Argentinian event, inspired in the Uruguayan case, where also the primaries are also mandatory and simultaneous, but are not mandatory for the voters. So in Argentina, the primaries work till now had worked as a kind of census of the population, which, because then you have 2 months for the real election, let's say, parties could restructure the strategy. And the main idea, and I did several interviews to Juan Manuel Abal Medina, who was the designer, the main designer of this law, was to prevent party fragmentation, which they were observing in other Latin American countries, thinking that it's good for governance and for representation to have strong parties. The idea of having these primaries with this very specific design, open, simultaneous, and mandatory, was to prevent party fragmentation, because the primaries also play a role filtering small parties. So in the primaries in Argentina, more than 20 parties compete, but only the ones who achieve more than 1.5% of the votes go to the first round. So we ended with only 5 parties, despite in the primaries were more than 20. So it works also on that. And then also works in the sense that avoids party divisions, generates incentives to play together, because then you have the internal and they work together. This time, all these worked not really well, because parties were about to split, particularly the opposition, the traditional opposition, Juntos por el Cambio. And this is in part the explanation of this very bad performance of the traditional opposition, only in part. So we have the primaries. Then we have also the partial renewal of the parliament. So when we go to the lower chamber, what we had now was a process to elect only 130% of the members of the parliament, which are 257. So the majorities you have reflect in deputies this election and the previous election. So for an outsider, the probability of having a majority is really low, really, or impossible directly. And the same happens in the Senate, in which the elections are per third. So the Senate, the composition reflects this election and the 2 previous. So again, it is a system designed to provide stability in the competition. And then, of course, we have the province of Buenos Aires, which has 40% of the population and is sub-represented, which also helps to compensate the power of the provinces. It's a federal system. We can talk much more about that. But again, the main point is that the system is controlled by parties. Parties are very powerful, and despite that, emerged Milei. So the question is why it happened. And there are many explanations. Again, I already spoke about this insatisfaction, the level of corruption. The Argentinian economy is not growing. This is the case for many years. And I also think it's very important to consider the changes, and this, I think, is a fascinating topic, the changes in the employment sector. Because Argentina and the Peronist Party is quite closely connected with the labor unions, the sindicatos, which are part of the columna vertebral, we said. It's one axis of the Peronist Party. But then, from 2000, more or less, the Argentinian economy has been changing a lot. Not only because the economy is not growing, but also because informality spread, unemployment spread. And this is also a quite interesting particularity in Argentina, because it has, as Juan Carlos de la Torre used to say, Juan Carlos Torre, is a very organized civil society with kind of conscience of the veto powers the society has. So in Argentina, mobilizations are a constant. You have always mobilizations everywhere. And groups are always fighting for their rights, for their salaries, for their... And yes, normally in places in which unemployment is high, you don't have this kind of organization. Well, in Argentina, we do have. And in fact, the government of Néstor Kirchner first, and then Cristina Kirchner, and until now, because I think the government of Macri from the opposition tried to change that, but didn't really change anything of this, and the economy also performed very bad during his period. These sectors are highly organized too. This is called the social economy. And these sectors are working in close relation with the state. I think it's a myth that they live from the state, because if you follow the anthropological work showing that, it's much more complex. But in any case, for some middle class sectors in the Argentinian society, now is a kind of very negative view of the connection of these sectors with the state subsides. And this is part of the explanation of Milei's support, I think. Because also we have, and this is in the graph, you can see that the monotributistas, these are difficult figures, because there is a lot of things included on that. But what we have more and more and more is people who is not, doesn't have a formal contract, is self-employed. Some of them are maybe IT people working for European countries, but many of them are working in illegal economies or in semi-legal economies. And all these people also is perceiving the high levels of corruption in the environment as something that challenges the way of living. And I suggest the work of Matías Tewi in St. Gallen now, on the way to analyze how this also played an effect in the support of Milei. And I think I have 5 minutes more or less to close. Sorry. Well, I moved to, well, it's the same. What I wanted to say also, what happens with Massa, because this was the second part of the surprise. This would open also for a long conversation, but still putting the pieces together. Yesterday, I was answering questions from different journalists in different places, and one of the questions was, like, in the second round, you will say that whoever wins will be a triumph of populism? And my answer is no. If it's Milei the winner, yes, clearly, it's the triumph of populism. If it's Massa the winner, I think it's the triumph of the partidocracia, again, of the apparatus, of the party apparatus. And this is what clearly we have seen on this period from August till now, how the party activated in the territory. There are already some data showing how they were very selective in the provinces in which the party could activate people to achieve more votes, to reach. And then also, of course, there was the Plan Platita, little money plan, it's called like that for everybody in Argentina, who was activated also to convince some people, where many legislative changes in this direction, provisional also, and again, in a country in which we have 150% of inflation, so it's like playing with fire, these kind of measures. But what is true, I think, is that the Peronist Party has this capacity in strong connection with the labor unions, with the social economy, with some governors in the provinces, And all this was very active, and of course, the role of the, let's say, angst, or the people is really afraid, many people is really afraid of a candidate as Milei. But then again, it's more than that, because this is clear, this is part of the answer, but were more candidates, not only Massa. So I think that's why I think is, on the one hand, what explains the results is that Milei is a very outsider, strange candidate for the discussion today in Argentina, for a democratic country, for the perspectives in the future, as I said, for instance, to break relations with the Vatican. But then also the party played a fundamental role activating everything. Some parts are highly democratic, I would say. In universities was a debate about what means for democracy this and that. And others are really clientelistic networks which are active and also play this role. I used to define the Argentinian system as a pluralism by default. Again, as something like with some negative aspects and some positive, because I think it prevents authoritarianism, this distribution of power, but at the same time, these kind of strong clientelar networks also prevent the possibility of deepening democratization. And with this, I think I will close, because I'm quite sure you will have some comments or questions to talk more about democracy also.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Janina, for this extremely precise and engaging presentation. I think you have walked us through the functioning and the design of the institutions in the context of Argentina, but you also have made us, I think, understand how political campaigns actually are activated on the ground and have been activated in the case of Argentina since a few months. So I think maybe if I can start with a question, and I invite the audience to also share their own questions. So we welcome short questions in order to have time to get more of them. Please avoid comments, but really think of framing your intervention as questions. And we also welcome the comments, the questions rather, from the online room. So you have been, I think, describing the very context of the activation precisely of the political parties, but also the kind of civil society that is behind them and the connections between the everyday kind of practices of support by public policies and the parties and the people. So I would like maybe to ask you first how you analyze the role that civil society has played in this campaign and might continue to play in supporting these two leaders.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, because connecting with what I said before, Argentina is a very partido-centric country, and La Libertad Avanza is a new party. And in fact, we have also this system of the ballot boxes are printed by parties. And in election day, the parties have to send people to each one of the tables in which there is a vote. It means that a party needs something like 100,000 people to really control the elections. The figure of the fiscals is very important. So for a new party, it's almost impossible to do that. And this is another way of preventing the entrance of outsiders. However, people, particularly young people, really disappointed with the system and engaged by Milei's anti-casta, anti-politician discourse, offer to play a role on that. So I think we have to recognize this as an extreme proof of to what extent people, when trusting something or has an illusion, whatever you think about the meaning of this illusion, engage in politics, because we are talking more and more about use this engagement with electoral politics. And then in the Argentinian case, what we saw is that Milei managed to mobilize many young people around the country to control the election day and to do campaign, because in fact, there is a discussion on that. Some people say that Milei is connected with extreme right in Europe and the United States. It's clear that some connections are, but it's not clear at all that they are receiving money, for instance. As far as we know, the La Libertad Avanza is the party who spent less money, but much less than the other parties. So again, how this campaign was so effective? Through social media, because when you have engaged people, not paid, but working because they believe in something, they are very active in doing this dissemination. So I think this is part of a very interesting point. And then on the other side, if we think in the two traditional coalitions, the Peronist Party, civil society is very active and well organized. I talked already about the labor unions, but then it's also all this economía social y colaborativa, who also is very active. And probably this was also part of the problem of the other traditional opposition, the difficulty to engage people and groups in this mobilization, which was much lower and weak than the other two, the ones who arrived to the second round.
Maybe a connecting point would be the very role of parties in the Argentinian system, and how maybe this has, in some sense, protected Argentina from backlashes experienced by other traditional parties in other Latin American countries. So how would you frame the role of institutions and the role of parties in Argentina vis-a-vis other Latin American countries at the moment?
With a colleague from the University of San Martin, Alicia Licidini, rewrote a paper recently in Spanish, but if someone is interested, comparing 6 countries, or 6 leftist parties in government in Latin American countries. And what we try to analyze is the connection of these parties in government with the social movements which are connected to them ideologically. And we use a kind of basic definition of what is left, the parties who are self-recognized as leftist parties, which is a kind of club membership. No? And what we found is quite interesting because, for instance, in the case of La Concertación in Chile, the divorce between the social movements and the government, the center-left coalition, in part explains the crisis of representation the country experienced later, because there was no connection. And this connection is very important, not only to have popular support, to keep electoral support, but also to explain and define the agenda and explain how policies are designed in countries in which the budget is so little. Because I think in the case of Colombia, I think it's the perfect case. Petro arrived to the government after a long period in which the country had always right-wing governments. So the social movements are well organized and they all want answers now. And the government doesn't have majority in the parliament. The global context is a context of crisis. There is no much money to answer to this. So what you do with this, if you do have networks, then you can explain, you can really reinforce the idea of how citizenship is built, to have a common project. If you don't have that, then you have movements that immediately will go to strike, will go to, and this is very relevant. Then, if we go to the other side, and the connection is too strong, you have Venezuela. So you have an authoritarian system in which the social movements are not anymore having an independent or semi-independent agenda. Argentina is in the middle. is not ideal. I think I would prefer in this approach Bolivia or Uruguay, where social movements are also independent and part of the management and so on. But Argentina is in the middle because the social movements in Argentina, and I think here there are several coming from Argentina and probably will agree with me, the social movements can be aligned with the government, but if the government doesn't provide answers, we'll also mobilize. So it's not a kind of alignment forever, or it's not an authoritarian system. It's not. Each one keeps an agenda, and there are constant negotiations. This is why I speak about this pluralism by default, because there are incentives for many actors to keep some power, and nobody can take everything. Because of the federal system, because of the role of the legislative, because of there are many conditions explaining why it's so difficult. And I really like to look at these processes from this approach, because in general I prefer to avoid the reflection on the psychological dimension, who is an authoritarian leader and who is not. Of course, we do have some specific characters which are really authoritarian. But then you see that in general, we have many actors which are a bit borderline. And it happens in Europe. I mean, it's not only in Latin America. We have cases in Hungary. We have parties in Switzerland which also have philo-authoritarian discourses sometimes. So it's interesting to see how this game played by institutions, the independence of the movements, and plays an important role keeping a kind of, not, let's say, full democracy, but at least prevents authoritarianism and sets maybe the scenario for the hope that democratization could advance.
Thank you, Janina. We have one question here, and then I'll take a question from the online room.
Hello, I could make a lot of questions, but related to this, do you think it has to do with how strong the right to peaceful assembly is, and what do you think about the discussions around this right?
Could currently? You please repeat?
Yes, related to the last, to your last answer, do you think it has to do with how strong the right to peaceful assembly is in Argentina, and what do you think about the discussions around this right from the different candidates? And then moving to a different topic, what do you think about the role of the media in Milei rising as he did, and the move to the right for all the parties, at least the three main parties?
So I think we have already two questions here. So maybe I'll let you answer those, and then I'll take the question from the person who joins online.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the first part. You said civil society, right?
No, the right to peaceful assembly. That's about because you were saying how strong civil society is and the possibility of civil society to mobilize against even the government with which they are in principle aligned. And do you think this has to do with how strong the right to peaceful assembly is in Argentina? Because it is stronger than in a lot of other places.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't have an answer. I think it's a political culture thing. It's intuitive, let's say. But I really feel that this kind of, I think we do know that civic virtues you learn by doing, right? In places in which people is more active, and then this is a learning process. And of course, it's also that the system works like that. If you mobilize, you get something as an answer. No, I think this is also interesting. When the state is so far away, when repression is the answer, then mobilization is different. And I think in Argentina, it's a kind of like a Calder's sculpture in which you have like many pieces making an equilibrium. No, it's something like that. So I don't have a definitive answer, but I think it's a question of political culture. And regarding your second question, as in many other places, and I'm thinking now in Spain with Vox, for instance, the media, the traditional media played an important role. And we have with this a systemic problem because media is working with a market orientation. And then attracting attention is the main goal. And then you have someone who is very special, who attracts a lot of attention because he's aggressive, because he's speaking in very high voice, saying things that are not normal in the discussion, or yes, did play a role. But I also think, and I'm quite convinced, and I stress that because I think it shows the lack of political responsibility of our elites, that there was a very miscalculation on the two big coalitions in Argentina. The Juntos por el Cambio and Unión por la Patria, the change of the names is like Unión por la Patria, both thought that by feeding Milei were like weakening the adversary. Because traditionally in Argentina, well, traditionally, in the previous 20 years, the political cleavage was Peronism and anti-Peronism, very strong. So they both thought, and this is very clear, I think. And then it was a big mistake. It went beyond their hands. So it's not only the media. It's a very clear political responsibility, and particularly the government, because they thought that because Milei is closer to liberal, radical dimensions that Bullrich is also defending in terms of security and stopping the subsides, etc., they fed this candidacy, and then the PASO were a big surprise because it went too far.
Maybe let me first take one of the online questions, which is connected to what you just said. And Veronica is asking, what do you think about Peronism and Kirchnerism? Are they the same? How is the power relation between Cristina Kirchner and Massa, in your opinion? Is it different to the one between her and Alberto Fernandez? And maybe let me take another question from the online room, and then I will get back to you after Janina responds to this. And how is your definition of populism? Actually, isn't buying votes through programs like Platita populism? I would like to understand, says Connie, better your definition of populism.
Good. Yeah, well, the first question, I mean, I need a seminar to answer. And even I don't know if I would manage. Well, Peronism is an umbrella. And I think it's an umbrella that has in common, and currently we are experiencing this once again, the orientation to achieve and keep power. There is much more than that. But I think this is the definition of Peronism, because in other movements, you split when you have such problems. And in the Peronist movement, the orientation is to achieve and keep power. And of course, inside the movement, you have very leftist, like Grabois, or you have more right. In fact, Massa, the candidate, comes from a liberal party originally. So but this also happens in the other coalition, which everybody associates with the right, and also the socialist parties in there. So the ideological dimension in Argentina is something difficult to take, because we have a huge spectrum in both. And in some moments, it's more predominant one side or the other. So yeah, Kirchnerism is, I think, the expression of Peronism during 2003 till recent times. Then Massa, Cristina, Alberto, well, I think it's completely different. When Cristina, the current vice president, selected Alberto Fernandez to be the candidate for the presidency, was a clear reading of her strong points and her weakest points, meaning that she has an electoral support estimated in 25 to 30%, very strong, but she also is hated by many people. So she had to look for a different candidate. Now with Massa, they had even personal problems in the past. It's more strategic. She didn't manage to impose a candidate and accepted the one who emerges from the primaries. So I think it's quite different the moment in which we are living. There is a quite interesting reaccommodation. And if I can go further just to say something I wanted to say before, Milei now, connected to the cleavage and the strategies, I was really surprised by his discourse after the first round, because he spoke like Macri. I mean, so the anti-casta, anti-politician thing suddenly is anti-Peronism. And is appealing to this sector of the electorate, while Massa now is asking the Unión Cívica Radical, the former party of Alfonsín, I mean, it's a center-left party, sometimes center-right, depending on who I look at. And he's asking for a national unity, a big agreement, a new starting point. So you see the strategies again, and it's quite interesting because Milei moved to the anti-Peronist cleavage, and Massa to the ideological. State, the role of the state, public education, the role of what we expect for our, etc., etc. So it's very interesting, this sudden movement in the post-electoral day.
So maybe a very quick response to populism, and isn't the kind of buying votes also a form of populism?
Yeah, this is interesting because the person asking the question assumes, associates populism with public expenditure. And this is the typical thing, but the mainstream definition of populism is not related to that, but to discursive strategies, to this division of the people, of the society in two, the good people and the ones who are like just, preventing development, etc., and has different shapes in different countries. So I think that's why I think to understand Massa is not a populist leader, which doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just the way in which we use the concept. Peronist is a clientelistic party, yes, it is. But also other parties in Argentina are developing these kind of networks. So I think with a narrow definition of populism, is not populism what defines Massa now. I don't think so.
Thank you. There are two questions here, and then in the back we take the two. And then you.
So firstly, I would like to thank you for sharing your knowledge and for the great presentation, which I think was fair. So I think that's very important. And with your answer before, you already gave some insights on the question I will ask you. It's evident now that it's very hard to predict what's going to happen in the next phase of the electoral process. And there was a comment you made that I would personally disagree with, which is the fact that a lot of political scientists have seen the dichotomy between the way that Milei's party tends to radicalize itself until the end of the voting process, whereas personally I watched the presidential debate and I saw a much more, or at least Milei was, for me, trying to portray someone that was more collected and was trying to appeal to the general public. I didn't see him speaking with this high voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's where I disagree with your comment, and it leads me to my question. So as you stated, on one side we have this minister, Massa, that represents a strong state, and on the other side we have Milei that wants to limit the power of the state in order to let the free market regulate the inflation that's affecting Argentina right now. And I assume that both will try to appeal to the voters of Patricia Bullrich that simultaneously want to change, but at the same time, a lot of them are scared of the unknown, which is represented by Milei's controversial ideas. And my question to you is, are the results of this election, or are the keys to winning this election in the hands of the voters of Patricia Bullrich? And how do you see that impact the way Massa and Milei portray themselves in the next phase of the elections?
Thank you. And there was, yes, the question just in the back from, yeah.
No, that's right. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm from Argentina as well, and I think my most alarming outtake, I would say, from the election in terms of democratic quality is how I think maybe for the first time at the national level, we saw a very overt use of the state for campaigning. And I think that is probably traditionally was more visible at the subnational level, but this time it was very overt, also by the fact that the candidate from the government was also a sitting minister, even though he said he would resign. So what do you think in terms of the future of the strength of the electoral process in Argentina and democratic quality in general? Is this the beginning of a potential uneven playing field in the electoral arena?
Very good questions. Thanks for your question, because in fact, you know, you have 30 minutes and you have to say many things in short, and now I have the opportunity to go a bit further on that, because you are absolutely right. And here the point is again that Milei is a very singular candidate. And he has a party because he had to create a party, because in Argentina, you only can run for a position if you do have a party. This is not the same in other places in which by signature collection you can be president, for instance, in Panama or in other countries. In Argentina, you need a party. But he is a very singular person who we have to see to what extent is able to structure a party. So in the debates, yes, you are right, he looked strangely calm and he was more, but what happened with the people he selected to go with him? And probably you know, we had Vanegas Lynch saying that rivers should be privatized. And yes, we had Limones, which quite sure or already is confirmed will be a member of the parliament, suggesting a law for which if a woman is pregnant in 15 days has to notify the father of the baby, and he has to sign if he wants to really support economically the kid or not. This was 10 days ago and was a proposal. So, and then the break with the Vatican also happened through one. So was many people around Milei who kept radicalizing even further the discourse. And this was amplified by the media. So there was a kind of opposite trends with a Milei which tried to go to the center, or at least calm down. I don't know if go to the center, but the others not. Was really, I mean, there are many more examples. Now I don't remember all, but in the discussion of the previous days, the babies market was also something like really, I don't know, like disturbing for many people. So yeah, this is, I think this is part of the explanation of why he didn't keep the trend to increase the electorate. And then the voters of Bullrich, I mean, in narrow sense, yes, but we really can speak about voters of Bullrich, because part of the Bullrich problem was that she wasn't able to keep control on the party. And I think these votes, only a small part is Bullrich votes. Another part, let's see, because probably the traditional Unión Cívica Radical people won't go for Milei. They are already saying that they won't go. So I think these votes are kind of free votes. We have to see what happens. And then, yeah, I mean, you have the answer in your question. This is really bad. Anyway, it's not new also. It's more extreme because of the situation. So, but I think it's not the use of institutional media to do campaign, which was a constant and probably more extreme than before, but the whole situation, again, of a minister of economy who is the candidate of a country with 40% of poverty, 150% of inflation, and then is talking about the future, like not really connecting his responsibility with the present. But your question was regarding the electoral system. I'm not sure. I think till now, and recently I had a conversation with Talavia, who is in charge of the process, the electoral processes in Argentina, and one interesting aspect in the conversation was that Argentina, different to what happened in Peru, in Brazil, in Estados Unidos, in many other countries, nobody knows about the electoral system because people trust in the electoral system. So till now, this has been a very strong aspect of the Argentinian democratic institutionality. But yes, Milei's people has been talking about, in negative terms, about the process. So let's see. Slowly we see a negative evolution in this aspect.
Thank you very much, Janina, for this very interesting presentation. And I think also the audience had a lot of questions connecting to the points that you made. So it was really very interesting for us. And I would like to thank you also on behalf of the organizers and the Institute. And I would also like to inform those who wish to read more also about your work that your last book is titled The Will of the People, Populism and Citizens' Participation in Latin America. So it's really on our topic today, published last year by the Gruyter. And there is another book that you will precisely present this afternoon, which is the Handbook of Citizens' Assemblies in a Comparative Perspective. So this event will take place at 5:15. You can see more information online on the events of the Graduate Institute. And finally, Janina, you're a founding member of Red de Politólogas, a network of women political scientists. And I think there was also your Twitter account or X account mentioned in the slides. So yeah, please continue following and join the conversation with Janina. Thank you and have a very nice afternoon.